the eyes, Chico. They never lie.
Welcome back to Cinephiles. Today we're exploring one of cinema's most compelling and tragic figures, Michael Corleone from the Godfather trilogy, played by the iconic Al Pacino. Michael is not just a mafia don, he's a man caught between the desires for power, family loyalty, and a dream of redemption. His transformation, his relationships, and his internal conflicts make him one of the most compelling characters ever written. You see, in this video, we'll be deep diving into how Michael uses his eyes, how his body language speaks volumes, and the ways in which his speech exerts control over others. We'll dissect his relationships with his father, Vito, his brothers, his wife, Kay, and others who shape his destiny. By the end, you'll have a clearer picture on why Michael Corleone is both a tragic hero and a deeply flawed man. Let's begin with one of Michael's most iconic and unsettling characteristics, his unblinking gaze. His eyes are his greatest weapon. They conceal more than they reveal. Throughout The Godfather, Al Pacino portrays Michael as a man who rarely blinks, especially in moments of high tension. The deliberate choice speaks volumes about Michael's ability to compartmentalize, calculate, and keep his emotions in check. Eyes are, as they say, are the windows to the soul. But in Michael's case, his eyes function like fortresses, gates impenetrable and unyielding. His rarely blinking gaze represents his need for control, whether he's staring down his enemies like Salazzo or McCluskey, or dealing with his family. Michael's eyes never betray him. They reflect his ability to mask his emotions, to remain cold and detached. Even when making decisions, they devastate those around him. Take, for an example, the infamous restaurant scene in The Godfather. Michael is meeting Salazzo and McCluskey, knowing full well that he is going to kill them. As the conversation proceeds, Michael's eyes do all the talking. He listens, but he's not engaging in what they're saying. His attention is solely on the task ahead. He's calm, collected, with the occasional glances signalling his readiness. He hardly blinks, creating an undeniable tension. The less he blinks, the more ominous the atmosphere becomes, and when the moment arrives, his eyes show no remorse as he coldly executes both men. Michael's lack of blinking symbolizes his control, not just over himself, but the whole situation. His eyes are often the last thing his victim sees before they die, and in those moments, Michael's gaze is cold and calculating. This makes him terrifying, not because he enjoys violence, but because he's able to completely detach from the gravity of his actions. It's not just about power. It's about total emotional control, something his father Vito also had, but in a very different way. You see, as the trilogy progresses, however, Michael's eyes begin to show cracks in his facade. By the time you reach the third Godfather film, we see moments where his eyes are no longer impenetrable. They reflect regret, fear, and the guilt of a man who has lost everything. His once steady gaze becomes more erratic, as if he's haunted by the ghosts of his past. His eyes no longer conceal, but reveal a man whose soul is burdened by the weight of his choices. Michael's personality is complex. It's a blend of emotion, loyalty, and paranoia. At the outset of The Godfather, Michael is portrayed as an idealist, someone who's fought for his country in World War II and rejects the family business. He's the good son, the one who wants to live outside the world of crime. But beneath the exterior lies a man who, even before he takes the reins of the Corleone family, possesses the qualities that will ultimately doom him. You see, unlike his father, Vito Corleone, who built his empire on loyalty, trust, and diplomacy, Michael is defined by his needs for control. Vito was warm, even charismatic, with a deep sense of honor. He believed that power came from relationships, alliances built on mutual respect. Michael, however, he sees power as something to be seized, secured, and defended at all cost. You see, one of Michael's most defining traits is his emotional coldness. Even early on, when he's trying to live a normal life with Kate, there's a distance between him and the people he loves. He's analytical almost to a fault, and he keeps his emotions locked away, allowing only brief moments of vulnerability to slip through. His calm demeanour hides a growing ambition and desire to control everything around him, including the people closest to him. The need for control becomes more evident after the attempt on Vito's life. Michael's shift from the good son to the cold-blooded mafia killer. The need for control becomes more evident after the attempt on Vito's life. Michael's shift from the good son to the cold-blooded mafia don begins here. What starts as a desire to protect his family turns into obsession with power. He's no longer just reacting to threats, he's actively seeking to eliminate those that can even materialize. His calculated nature allows him to see threats whether others don't, but it also alienates him from those he cares about. As Michael rises to power, he becomes more paranoid and ruthless. Unlike his father, who was able to balance compassion with authority, Michael loses his moral compass. He becomes willing to sacrifice anything, anyone, for the sake of his family. His paranoia consumes him, leading to decisions like executing his own brother Fredo. Now, don't get me wrong, Fredo messed up. The scene, the kiss of death, is an iconic scene, and it shows that even Michael will kill his own family members to save his own. He'll kill his own brother, his friends, people that he's known for all of his life, to protect his family. I mean, at this point, it shows that there is no return for Michael. Michael cannot change. His pursuit for absolute loyalty means that even familiar bonds are disposable. Yet it's important to note that Michael's personality is deeply tragic. He doesn't kill Fredo out of anger or hatred. He does it because he believes it's necessary for the survival of this family. In Michael's mind, everything he does is for the greater good of the Corleone legacy, but in reality he's destroying that very thing that he claims to protect. His cold logic drives him into moral decay, and by the end of The Godfather 3, Michael is a shell of a man he once was, a king without a kingdom, left to wrestle with consequences of his own choices. Another critical aspect of Michael Corleone's character is his body language, which speaks volumes when he remains silent. Michael's movements are always controlled, deliberate and minimal, and the physical restraint mirrors his emotional restraints. While other characters in the trilogy, like his hot-headed brother Sonny, are quick to react physically, Michael's stillness is his power. In many scenes, Michael dominates the room without needing to raise his voice or make grand gestures. His stillness is a form of authority. Take, for example, the scene in The Godfather where he confronts Carlo, his brother-in-law, about betraying Sonny. Michael's posture is relaxed, his voice is calm, and his motivations are minimal. He doesn't need to threaten Carlo physically because his mere presence is enough. Carlo, oblivious to his fate, believes Michael's calm demeanour means he will be spared. In reality, Michael's already decided Carlo's fate, and the execution is merely a formality. The contrast between Michael's internal ferocity and external calm is one of his defining traits. You see, unlike Sonny, who reacts impulsively and physically, Michael thinks several steps ahead. His physical composure, especially in a tense situation, allows him to maintain control. It is a contrast between Michael's internal ferocity and external calm is one of the defining traits. You see, unlike Sonny, who reacts impulsively and physically, Michael thinks several steps ahead. His physical composure, especially in tense situations, allows him to maintain control. This is a stark contrast between the emotional volatility of those around him. Even in moments of extreme tension, Michael's body language remains measured, which gives him an almost inhumane level of control over the situation. As Michael ages, his physicality begins to reflect the toll his choices have taken on him. In Godfather Part 3, we see Michael much frailer than he usually is. But even in a weaker state of mind, he still commands respect. His body may be failing him, but his mind remains sharp, and his movements, though slower, still convey authority. This deterioration is a symbolic of Michael's internal decay in his soul. Like his body is worn down for years of ruthless decisions and the weight of his guilt. Michael's speech patterns are as calculated as his body language. He rarely speaks more than necessary, and when he does, his words carry a gravity that demands attention. Unlike his father, who often used warmth and charisma to win people over, Michael's speech is cold, effective, and devoid of unnecessary emotion. One of the most striking aspects of Michael's speech is its calmness, even in moments of extreme tension, in contrast to characters like Sonny who shout and gesture wildly. When angered, Michael's voice remains measured and low. This calmness is disarming, and it forces the people around him to pay close attention to what he says. When Michael speaks, his words carry the weight of command. He doesn't need to raise his voice to assert authority. His mere presence and the way he speaks are enough to convey dominance. A perfect example of this is the scene in where Godfather Michael confronts Carlo. Throughout the conversation, Michael speaks calmly, even reassuringly. He tells Carlo that he's forgiven him for betraying Sonny, but his soft voice and measured tone hide the violent end that Carlo is about to meet. Or the scene where he speaks to Mo Green. He's calm, he's collected. He doesn't speak unless he absolutely has to. And you can see the vast contrast and difference between him and Mo Green. Mo goes in mental, insane, kicks off, screams and shouts. But Michael is soft. His voice is chilling. He doesn't need to talk unless he absolutely have to. And that shows the commanding respect and shows that that man can get under the skin of even the most powerful people in Las Vegas. But of course, this contrast is evident again in The Godfather Part 2. As another example I give you, when Michael confronts Fredo. "I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart." Michael's words were soft, almost whispered, but their impact is devastating. It's not just the words themselves, it's the way they're delivered that makes the scene so powerful. Michael's calm voice contrasts with the depth of betrayal he feels, and the result is a moment that is far more emotionally devastating than any act of violence. Michael's ability to control his speech mirrors his control over his emotions. Just as he keeps his body still and controlled, he keeps his voice measured and calm. Even in moments of extreme stress, it's a tool of power, but it's also a mask that hides emotional turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Michael Corleone's relationships with the other characters in the trilogy are essential to his arc, as they illustrate the gradual descent into isolation and moral corruption. You see, let's start with his father, Vito Corleone. In the beginning, Michael idolizes his father, but also strives to be different from him. While Vito built an empire through strategic alliances and a careful balance of kindness and intimidation, Michael initially wants to live an honest life and separate from the family business. However, after obviously the attempt on Vito's life, Michael steps into the role as a protector, and this marks the beginning of the transformation. By the time Michael becomes the head of the family, he's adopted many of his father's methods. But there's a crucial difference. Vito ruled with a sense of loyalty and compassion, while Michael relies on fear and control. His relationship with his wife Kay is another tragic element of the story. In the beginning, Kay represents the normal life that Michael yearns for, a life outside the mafia with the possibility of redemption. However, as Michael becomes more entrenched in the family business, his relationship with Kay deteriorates. He lies to her, manipulates her, and eventually shuts her out completely. Kay's gradual disillusionment with Michael is one of the most heartbreaking aspects of the trilogy. She starts as an outsider to the Corleone family, but by the end, she's trapped in Michael's world, unable to escape the consequences of his choices. The ultimate symbol of Michael's moral downfall is his relationship with his brother Fredo. Unlike Michael, Fredo is weak. He's insecure and easily manipulated. Fredo's betrayal in The Godfather Part 2 is not born out of malice, but out of desire for respect and recognition. Fredo wants to prove he's not the incompetent brother everyone thinks he is. But Michael cannot tolerate any form of betrayal, and his decision to have Fredo killed is the most devastating moment in the trilogy. Michael's choice to prioritize power over family marks his complete transformation into a ruthless and isolated leader. But by the time we reach the third film, Michael is a man who has lost everything. His relationship with his children is strained, his marriage to Kay is beyond repair, and his closest allies are either dead or have abandoned him. Michael's isolation is a result of his own choices. His need for control and his willingness to sacrifice anyone who gets in his way have left him alone and haunted by the ghosts of his past. Kay Adams, Michael's wife, is one of the most significant characters in the trilogy, not because of her involvement in the mafia, but because she symbolises what Michael could have had, that normal life that Michael once wanted. When Michael first introduces her to the family, it's clear that he sees a future with her that separates him from the criminal world. She's intelligent, she's independent, and completely unaware of the full extent of the Corleone family's power. In the early stages of the relationship, Kay represents hope for redemption, hope for a free life from violence, a life away from the mafia family. Michael's decision to marry her after returning from Sicily seems to signal his desire to leave the world behind. However, as the story progresses, it becomes clear that Michael cannot escape his destiny. Kay's significance lies in the fact that she's the only person who truly challenges Michael. She questions his decisions, his morality, and ultimately, his soul. The turning point in their relationship comes when Kay realises that Michael will never leave the family business. The moment she learns that is when Michael lied about killing Carlo. It marks the beginning of the end of their marriage. From that point on, Kay becomes increasingly disillusioned with Michael and the world he inhabits. Her decision to have an abortion in The Godfather Part 2 is her way of severing ties with Michael and the legacy of violence he represents. She no longer wants to bring children into a world built on bloodshed and corruption. And by Godfather Part 3, Kay's role as Michael's moral compass becomes even more apparent. She represents the life Michael could have had if he had made different choices. When she confronts him about his past, it's clear that she still cares about him, but she also understands that Michael is beyond care. Her presence in Michael's life is a constant reminder of the normal life he could have had, but ultimately it's a life that he can never attain. Kay is the last vestige of Michael's humanity, but by the end of the trilogy, even that connection is beyond repair. You see, Michael Corleone is one of the most fascinating characters in cinematic history because of his complexity. His journey from reluctant outsider to ruthless mafia's don is a tragic and both inevitable. His need for control, his paranoia, and his cold-blooded ruthlessness lead to his downfall, isolating him from everyone he ever cared about. In the end, Michael's story is one of power and its corrosive effects. He begins as a man trying to protect his family, but by the end of the trilogy, he's destroyed it. The tragedy of the Michael Corleone is that in trying to be a father's successor, he loses everything that made him human. The eyes that once conveyed so much power are by the end filled with regret and loneliness. His arc is a powerful reminder that absolute power not only corrupts absolutely, but also isolates and destroys.